Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into some compelling material you've shared, maybe unsettling for some listeners.
Definitely. It unpacks this concept widely discussed as gang stalking.
Right, this idea of organized harassment surveillance, things that, frankly, many people might just dismiss out of hand.
But the source material we're looking at today, it presents a specific instance, even quoting police, as being, well, pretty common.
Yeah, that pretty common line really jumped out.
So what we're going to do is explore exactly how gang stalking is framed and contextualized within this specific audio you've provided us.
Exactly. Our mission for you today is to pull out the most critical bits, add some layers to your understanding. We're talking direct statements here.
From police, yes, and also from individuals who claim they're actually involved in this activity.
So you get a really direct, sort of granular look at the claims, the perceived realities in these conversations. Prepare yourself. Some of these claims are quite surprising.
They really are.
So, getting started. The initial speaker in the clip, they set the stage, don't they? They mention how just talking about gang stalking can make people sound, well, the word used is crazy.
Yes, and they even reference videos online mentioning doctors discussing the mechanics of it. One apparently even on InfoWars, which is, a platform known for its controversial takes.
Right, so it immediately frames this whole issue around credibility, or the lack thereof, for those who claim to experience it.
And what's interesting is how the source then pivots. It goes from that general perception, people thinking you're crazy, straight to what it calls damning evidence, actual recordings.
Trying to ground it, taking it from the abstract to something potentially verifiable, at least from their perspective.
Exactly, making it concrete.
Okay, so with that setup, the audio then, like you said, throws us right into this first key exchange. It's in a park. Police are questioning someone about electricity theft. Seems pretty mundane.
Yeah, totally routine on the surface. You wouldn't expect anything unusual.
But then the person being questioned, they just bring it up. They mention the gang stalking and all that.
Out of the blue, seemingly. And this is where the source claims the interaction takes a really surprising turn.
Because the police officer's response to that comment, the source highlights it as this huge moment, the officer says. What did the exact quote again?
The quote presented is, "That's pretty common." Yeah.
That's pretty common, yeah. Just like that. An admission, the source claims, from law enforcement, presented as key evidence.
Yeah, and the source really positions this not just as validating the individual, but as sort of pushing back against the idea that this is purely delusional. It suggests maybe there's more awareness, perhaps hidden.
But it's complex, isn't it? Because the source also notes that later the same officer seemed unaware, or pretended to be unaware, about citizens on patrol.
Right. That observation adds another layer. It questions the consistency, maybe the transparency of any claimed police awareness, at least as presented in this specific audio clip. It's not straightforward.
Okay, so that's the first interaction. A police officer saying it's pretty common. But then the source says there's something even more damaging.
Yes, that's how it's framed. It transitions to a second clip, setting up a direct confrontation initiated by the original speaker.
And the question is incredibly direct, just asking someone point blank.
The question posed is, are you involved in any act of following people? Just like that.
And the answer in the audio.
Presented as immediate, unhesitating, yes, I am.
Wow, okay, just yes, I am. Very blunt.
And that leads straight into the follow-up, linking back to that earlier police interaction.
The citizen on patrol idea.
Exactly. The question is, so are you a citizen on patrol?
Position of confirmation.
Comes back as not paid any, not, voluntarily, by choice. So this person, according to the source, explicitly identifies as a cop, a citizen on patrol, doing it voluntarily.
Reinforcing the original speaker's claims about this kind of organized, voluntary activity. And the speaker in the clip even reacts like, how did I know that?
Yeah, I'm a freaking citizen on patrol, implying they recognize the type. And the reason given, appearance.
Right, though the person denies being a gamer, despite apparently looking like one to the speaker. It's a slightly weird, almost mundane detail in the middle of this pretty intense claim.
It is. But then the narrative, as presented in the source, takes a much darker turn.
This is where it gets into the alleged system behind it all, the sort of business model.
That's right. It starts describing an alleged hierarchy and the exploitation involved. It paints a pretty stark picture.
Starting with the recruiters, how does the source describe them?
In very, let's say, vivid terms. It alleges these are high-level people living well. The quote is quite raw, something like, Somewhere up in the Phil Mountains, nice big-ass house, probably mansion somewhere, eating steak and shrimp.
Okay, so establishing a massive contrast between the alleged organizers and the people doing the actual work.
Precisely. And the compensation for these cops, the people on the ground, the source calls it peanuts.
Peanuts like,
Like gift cards, maybe a couple clothes, some shoes, some food, perhaps a place to stay. The implication is, minimal reward for significant effort and risk.
and the effort is significant according to the source. It mentions the hours involved.
Yeah, it claims they work 16 hours out the day or better, which sounds incredibly demanding, potentially highly exploitative, if true.
So who are these people allegedly being recruited for these long hours and low rewards?
This is one of the most controversial claims in the source material. It alleges, and again, this is a direct quote, that they hire crackheads and crystal heads and child molesters and frip epistle and F whoever else that can scrape up off the concrete.
That's a really harsh and specific allegation about targeting vulnerable, marginalized individuals.
Extremely harsh. It paints a picture of exploiting desperation.
And what's the alleged rationale? Why would recruiters do this, according to the source? It mentions a kind of philosophy.
Yes, a really disturbing one. The source calls it a two birds with one stone philosophy. The idea presented is that these cops are seen as disposable, as nobodies to them.
Disposable how?
Well, the source suggests that if something happens to them, if they die, it's almost seen as a benefit to the alleged recruiters. That, quote, implies their thinking is, the mission is going to continue, and basically they don't give a F about you.
That's a chilling depiction. Indifference and exploitation taken to an extreme level, as alleged in the source.
It really is. It's a very bleak picture of the alleged mechanics behind this.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways for you from this deep dive into the source material.
Sure. We've primarily unpacked the claims presented in this audio. First, there's that surprising alleged admission from a police officer that gangstalking is pretty common.
Right? Then the second major point, an explicit voluntary admission from someone claiming to be a citizen on patrol doing this by choice.
And finally, this detailed and frankly quite dark description of the alleged system behind it, the recruitment, the minimal compensation, the long hours, and the alleged exploitation of vulnerable people, all capped off by that disturbing two birds philosophy attributed to the organizers.
And hopefully this deep dive, just by focusing on the specifics within your source material, has added some texture to your understanding. We've moved beyond just the term gangstalking to look at the specific stories and alleged structures described by people supposedly within that world.
Exactly. It's about understanding the narratives presented in the source.
So maybe a final thought to leave you with based on all this. If we take these claims as presented individuals volunteering as citizens on patrol, the alleged motivations of those organizing them, what does that suggest? What kind of perhaps complex societal vulnerabilities might a system like this, if it exists as described, actually exploit? And what might that tell us about the lines between, perceived reality and maybe a desperate need for purpose or even just basic necessities?
That's a heavy question. It touches on issues of marginalization, community, purpose, and potentially manipulation. Definitely something to think about.